Welcome everybody, welcome to the launch of the 22nd Swindon Festival of Literature. And when one of our proofreaders read that, the 22nd Festival of Literature, he said, "That's a rather short festival." The problems we face with language. Thanks for making time from work and other practical matters of consequence to come along today. Sorry to have interrupted you with that bell. You were chatting to friends and you were looking at a little booklet. I was really loath to disturb you from being lost in a good program. Such a nice thing to see. So this interruption will not take long. It has 5 parts to it. A few words from me to begin with, then a surprise or 3 from 1 or 2 other people, a word from our mayor. Madam Mayor, can I see you here? If one of my helpers finds the mayor, maybe she'll show in a moment. And then we'll stop. You can go back to work, back to your life, or whatever else you're doing, with, I hope, a bundle of programs, because there's no such thing as a free lunch. And also this year, postcards. Be old-fashioned, get a postcard of your favorite library, write to your friends and say, "We've got a great library," and we've got a lovely postman who says he loves delivering postcards because he can read them. He said you can't, he likes reading. Okay. What do you think of it so far? I notice many of you have looked at it, and I'd like to say many thanks to the architects, Nick Newland and Tony Caravan. I think 1 or 2 of them are here, for designing this building. I think it's absolutely splendid. I drive past it more often than I come into it, but I love it every time I go past it. And thanks to Roger Ogle for taking a nighttime picture of it. Thanks to my designer, Jane, for messing about with it a bit. And thanks most of all to me for wanting to put our library on the front cover. I'm proud to do that. And we're thinking in future years, because now there'll be competition to be on the front cover of the Literature Festival programme. We're thinking of maybe a museum, maybe even a writer's museum, like a Richard Jefferies museum, maybe an old farm, and these things can all compete to be on the front cover of the Swindon Festival of Literature. Madam Mayor, I welcomed you before you were here. I welcome you again. It's very nice you're here. Okay, it's the 22nd Swindon Festival of Literature. 22, that is, not 22nd. Thankfully now, it is recognised as no bad thing and is supported by a number of organisations, including Arts Council England, the Swindon Borough Council, and many thousands. Wonder what many thousands what of? Let's see. Many thousands of people like you. Who attend its events and buy tickets each year. But there was a time, 22 years ago, when there was no Festival of Literature in Swindon. No festival followers and no festival funders, bar one. In the very first instance, it was thanks to a man many of you may have known or known of, called Dominic Winter, of Dominic Winter Book Auctions, that this festival came into existence. It was his idea to, as he put it in his very special way of speaking, "It would be nice maybe to have something bookish in Swindon," he said to me. And it was Dominic who, after a few chats, mostly in pubs with me, an impoverished but bookish enthusiast, put his money where his mouth was and made a financial commitment to the first festival, a commitment that has been maintained ever since. In fact, it was thanks to Dominic, a scrap metal merchant, Lower Shore Farm, and the encouragement of festival followers, many of whom I can see here today, that the festival survived its first 3 years. Not only survived, but thrived. And then, thankfully, when they saw it was a good thing, other sponsors and supporters and funders came on board. And the rest, as they say, is history. And so, in truly respectful manner of speaking, is Dominic. He died last October. As founder friend of the festival and good personal friend, Dominic is sorely missed. But he has a legacy, he certainly does, not only in his company, Dominic Winter Book Auctions, but also in the Swindon Festival of Literature. And for that, we can be very grateful. I certainly am. Dominic, thank you. The Swindon Festival of Literature is homegrown, truly homegrown, in Swindon, thanks not only to people like Dominic, but also to its HQ, Lower Shore Farm, support from Swindon Borough Council, local designers, Pink Handbag, local proofreaders, and local printers, Acorn Press, and now publicised by local marketing people, Secret Agent Marketing. Nothing is farmed out to faraway places, even though, in some senses, that would be cheaper. But we don't like cheapness, we like quality. A significant part of the festival's programme is also homegrown. And even though we have international authors, we have people flying in from the States and from France this year, much of the festival's programme is from local writers and local poets. So we can say that the Swindon Festival of Literature is a homegrown product and is definitely proud to be Swindon. Okay, I'd like to rest my voice and have a little, and let you have a little festival aperitif, a little taster. I'll give you an international storyteller who comes fresh from New York, but it is now finally hitting the big time in Swindon. Let's welcome to the Central Library Courtyard stage, Rachel Rose Reed.
We have a small story for you to warm your hearts, if not your fingers. The woman stepped out of the train station and into the shopping centre, and she watched the people coming out of Marks and Spencer's and Tesco's, hurrying home with their dinner and tea. And she realised that she herself didn't know quite where she was going or where she'd come from, so she thought she'd reach out to people and ask them. But as soon as she stretched out her hand to tap someone on the shoulder and they turned and looked at her, that's for dramatic effect. Someone will be standing there and holding it for the rest of the story, please. I think we should give them some pity and a hug later. As soon as she stretched out her hand to tap their shoulders and ask them something so she could understand where she was going and where she'd come from, and they looked into her eyes, they turned and scurried away as fast as she could say hello. And whenever she turned and stretched out her hands, no one would speak to her, no one would look at her, everyone pretended that they couldn't see her at all. So she looked down at her clothes to try and work out what was happening, and she realised, of course, her clothes were ragged, they had torn holes, they were a little bit stinky. Perhaps she thought, if I take the clothes off, then people will talk to me, because I understand they smell slightly strange. So she tore her clothes off, now she was naked as the day she was born. And you'd think someone would reach out to her, seeking to give her a little warmth, but no, they ran away even faster now, as you might yourself. And when she sat down under the awning of one of the shops in the cold, and she watched the people wandering one way and the other, hardly looking at her, she wondered what she would do this evening. And then, out from Accessorize, came a glamorous woman. She was one of those women so well coiffed that everyone thinks they might have seen her somewhere on TV, but they're not quite sure where. And everyone was taking out their phones and taking a little picture and wondering what they could tell each other and their friends in the evening about who they'd seen. She had soft flowing hair and a big fur coat, and she was the first person that turned and looked at the woman shivering under the shop awning, and she said, "What are you doing here, all alone, naked as the day you were born? What's happened to you?" "Oh," the woman said, "no one will speak to me, no one will talk to me. Who are you? You're beautiful." And the woman looked down and said, "Me? My name is Story, and wherever I go, people open their eyes, and they love me with all their hearts. And what's your name?" "Oh, my name," said the woman. "My name is Truth." Said Story, "there's your problem. But look at this big fur coat. Why don't you come with me? There's room enough for 2 of us under here. And so Truth, she's snuggled under that big fur coat, and the pair of them walked together, and as funny as a sight as it was, they have walked together even until this day. And so you will find that wherever Story travels, Truth comes with her, and she now receives wide eyes, open ears, and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. I bet that didn't happen to you in New York, eh? The festival has a reputation for ministering not only to matters of the mind, but also to the physical and the emotional. So I want to give you a little physical and emotional experience. Here's another little festival taster for you. I give you, in a moment, with no collapsing banners, a musician, a technical assistant, and another one. And another one. And I give you Hilaria y Jacob, Circo Cangrejo. Jacob y Hilaria, muchísimas gracias. Ahora podemos seguir con el lanzamiento. Espero que no es demasiado frío para... Oh, I forgot, where are we? Thanks very much. They now are the only two people here who are warm. So I realize that moving my tongue a lot does not warm me up. That young man moving his hands a lot is doubtless warmed up. It won't be much longer, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get back down to earth. Let's remember this is a literature festival, not a circus. I was at an event once where I saw a woman with a chain around her neck who was a dignitary, and she talked lovingly about books and reading, and I thought, I want that woman, in a manner of speaking. She's here for you today, here. Will you please give a Swindon Festival of Literature cold Central Library courtyard welcome to the Mayor of Swindon, Councillor Teresa Page.
Thank you very much, Matt. Well, as you can see, I've been listening to the weather forecast. Hot, sunny, wear very little. So here I am. This is an absolute pleasure, as always. I mean, to have books. What a joy for those of us who can read. And there are now so many things out there for our people who are unable to see, but we have the equipment for them to be part of this literature festival. Absolutely amazing. When I was a child, my sister used to buy me one book each Christmas. What Katie did, what Katie did next. I think I had 5, but I used to always read Bunty and Judy, the comics. My sister used to buy Romeo. My first boyfriend was in Romeo. But this is going to be a great festival for Swindon, as always, a great time. And this is the great thing that I've learned about Swindon since becoming mayor. We really are a town, but we have a city attitude, and with things like this going on for so many years now, I mean, now who was that ghost lady? She crept up on my right, just like the car do on the roundabout. But this is going to be great, and I'm sure you'll all take part in it. And I'm looking forward to reading some books as well. I was hoping that we may have had some Irish writers here today, because they do tell a good story, you know. But as I say, I won't delay you out here because I'm cold, and the man in the front has got his arms stuck up his sleeves. Another lady has a blanket on. But enjoy this. It's all part of Swindon. It's part of your town, and you make it good. Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
I can't help calling you Teresa. I meant to say Madam Mayor and things like that. Teresa, I love the things you say. I could listen all day, even though it's cold. And you really give me a sense that you understand and appreciate the literature festival. And when you say an Irish writer, actually we do. But what you actually said, they tell good stories. And we have many unusual events for a literature festival. And one of them is, we have a boxing event. A woman from London has written a book about boxing called Boxer Handsome, and in Swindon we have a great Irishman called Paddy Fitzpatrick who trains international boxers, and he is coming and he will be on the stage at the Arts Centre telling Irish stories. So there you are, for you, Madam Mayor. Your wish is our command. Okay, we are coming close to the end. Here is one thing I want to say, and I have said this in years previous, but people don't take any notice of me, so here's a reminder. Get your tickets early. I do not suddenly want to have lots of new friends, offering me things that I don't want and have already got in exchange for tickets. Please don't be beaten by people from Basingstoke and Birmingham and London and Lincoln. Don't let them get in before you. We have a fantastic team of box office workers who've been brought on in extra greater number this year, ready to take your bookings. So please don't wait till it's too late and say, why aren't the theatres bigger, or why can't we have more tickets? There are only so many tickets. Another thing you can do is to go at the end to two of our lovely helpers, Adele and Kate, and get yourself a bundle of programmes and take some postcards. It's all free, postcards are free, and write to your friends and say, come to Swindon. One more thing, despite thorough proofreading, and despite Will Self saying 7 years ago, I'll come to the Swindon Festival of Literature, it's the only literature festival programme with no spelling mistakes. This year, for your enjoyment, for your pleasure, and I'm always competitive if nothing else, for a little competition, we have made a spelling mistake. The first person to find it, or rather the first person to tell me that they have found it, and it's not adrenaline. Adrenaline can be spelled with an E or without an E. Adrenaline without an E is very much like the brand name, so we've chosen to put the E on. So don't ring me up about adrenaline. When and if you find it, and you may not, because 2 proofreaders didn't find it, I made it. I made the mistake, that's the only clue you'll get. And the printer's professional proofreader didn't get it either. So if you find it, you get 2 complimentary tickets to an event of your choice. That's the first person to find the mistake, the deliberate mistake. Okay, very briefly now, let us go through the programme, hold it as if it's something that you really love. And we'll go through it from the back very quickly. I'll say on page 38, look at all those people in that box, they all helped make it possible. And on page 39, all those little names in small print, those are some of the many people and organisations that helped the Swindon Festival of Literature. On page 36, there's a tribute to the great Dominic Winter. He's gone, but his legacy lives on. The finale, the festival finale on pages 34 and 35, always sells out. If you're at all interested in having fun on the last night, if you're not completely exhausted, get your ticket soon for that. We have a writing workshop, of course. We have an unusual event in the library, in the museum at night. It's apparently scary, it has a storyteller, children friendly though. We have a woman with blonde hair who defies conventions about women with blonde hairs. She will talk about public intellectuals and come to that, and enter the Think Slam if you think you can say something interesting, challenging and intelligent for 3 minutes and have a competitive spirit. Moving swiftly on, you can see Shami Chakrabarti, very unusual event that brings Swindon Libraries, Swindon Dance and the Harbour Project together with a storyteller. Should be fascinating in this courtyard when it will be much, much warmer. There's a Labour politician there. Somebody said to me, why have you got a Labour politician? I said he's an ex-politician, and anyway, we had Anne Widdecombe last year. We're balanced, if not anything else, at the Swindon Festival of Literature. We've got Rory Bremner. Most people think of him as an impressionist, but actually he's a remarkable man. He's a librettist, he's a translator, and he's going to come and show his other sides, as well as that of an impressionist at the Swindon Festival of Literature. We've got a remarkable woman who, to mark the death of her mother, went on a postcard writing spree. What an unusual thing to do, and it worked brilliantly. If you want, interested, come and see. We have a local author there on that page. We have a whole evening of talking about art and the role of culture in life, why we need it. If that's already not self-evident to you, come along to that evening. It should be fantastic. We have a doctor who should really be a writer. Well, he is a writer and a doctor, and he does brain surgery, and he has remarkable stories to tell. We have a man who's written a book called Station to Station, and Swindon features in it a lot, and he'll be at the library here. We have Helen Lederer being funny. We have Peter Tatchell being serious about changing religions. We have a whole evening on inequality and how to make the world a better place. Some people think they know how to do it. I'm still trying to work it out. We have a youth slam. We have an adult slam. Those are poetry competitions. We have a woman, somebody said to me, who are you looking forward to at this year's festival? And they expected me to say Rory Bremner or some known name. And I said, Daisy Christodoulou. And they said, I beg your pardon. I said, Daisy Christodoulou. And they said, why? And I said, because she's going to talk about education and the role of education and how it all works. And she's a runner as well. But that should be a really interesting event. Robert Crawford talking about T.S. Eliot. Tony Hawk's talking about settling somewhere else. That amazing boxing event that I mentioned. Yung Chan from China. Sandy Toksvig at the Wyvern. Waltzing with Francis and Matilda. What can that all be about? Check it out. 2 days before the voting happens, a man comes and raises the question, should we vote or shouldn't we? I said, what a ridiculous question. We'll find out. And then on the first day of the festival, running and walking to warm ourselves up. And for those of you who aren't cold enough here today, come to the dawn chorus if you really want to know what hardship is. But everybody tells me each year, rain or shine, when they get back home, 2 things happen. One is a cup of tea tastes better than ever before. And the other is they like people they already liked a little bit more. Isn't that interesting? That's the outcome of going to a dawn chorus. That bell says we're on time and we're about to finish, and I am simply going to say thanks to the setup crew, Martin, Stuart, Hugo, Leon and company, to the caterers, Andrea, Marie, Lisa, Eleanor and Jess, and Litfeds, help us one and all. Central Library, thanks for hosting us. Storyteller Rachel, Circo Cangrejo, muchísimas gracias. Madam Mayor, thanks very much for coming, and you all for coming and suffering, but you're suffering for art. You know it makes sense. I look forward to seeing you at the 22nd, 2-week, not 22nd, 2-week Swindon Festival in May. Until then, keep well. Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers.
Hi, Matt. We were here last year for the 21st festival and you described it as coming of age. How would you describe a 22-year-old festival?
Oh, it feels like party time again. It's remarkable, even though it's rather chilly. It feels absolutely wonderful. It almost feels like the first rather than the 22nd or whatever it is. It's wonderful.
And of course, this time comes round and we have the launch and the programmes out there, but so much hard work has gone in the months beforehand. When you finish the festival, does the work start almost immediately for the following year?
Yes, it actually just goes on all the time. I'm always on the lookout for authors. I'm always on the lookout for interesting events to bring to Swindon. So that really never stops. That just goes on and on. And then there are a series of climaxes within it. So this is one of the climaxes. It's like giving birth for me. Here's the baby, and I want the people to like it, and the people appear to like it. That's a wonderful feeling. And then there's the festival itself, and that's absolutely wonderful. But no, the search for good events to bring to Swindon goes on year round.
Do you find it easier attracting the names people recognise than you did in the very early days?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question. I mean, we now do have a reputation. I don't want to be boastful, but people have heard of Swindon, you know. In the very first instance when I invited Melvyn Bragg, he said, yes, Swindon, that's near my home in Cumbria, I'll come. I said, no, Swindon. So that doesn't happen anymore. But it's a very competitive business. There are 350 festivals in the UK. They're all competing for the good names and the good events. But I think we are the most imaginative and the most unusual. And we're doing all right. Thank you very much.
Well, every year, like everyone else, we look forward to reading the programme, seeing the programme, flicking through it. It's always an incredible publication. It sort of heralds the start of spring in Swindon for so many of us, although it's not quite as warm as we'd like it to be. But just flicking through it, once again, you've managed to attract some really big names, and of course the smaller names or the people we haven't heard of that really bring so much interest to the festival.
That's a really good point, Phil, and that actually it's not only big names that make a good festival. There are plenty of remarkable writers, remarkable philosophers, remarkable thinkers, remarkable storytellers who haven't necessarily been on television, but who are absolutely brilliant. And year after year people say to me, that was a remarkable event I went to, and it was someone they hadn't heard of before. So no, I mean, that's my job, is to find tasty dishes.
And it's like Rory Bremner's on the list this year, but he's not coming here to do impersonations.
Exactly.
He's coming here with a different perspective.
He will do a few because he can't resist it. But he's coming to show us who Rory Bremner is, which is fantastic, a real insight.
And the historian Susanna Lipscomb, of course,
that's right.
famous because of Wolf Hall, that's been on the TV and her Tudor history, but she's here talking about being an intellectual.
Absolutely, and she's going to judge Swindon's trying to be intellectuals, having 3 minutes on stage, so she's going to be a judge as well. No, I'm glad you've picked up on these things. That's exactly the way it is.
And for the younger audience, the Poetry Slam, I know that's something that's particular to yourself, or something that's really grown over the years, isn't it?
And it really has, and it's now in its 11th year, I think, and I have a young poet who has now published a book, and she was first on stage as a 12-year-old at the Swindon Youth Slam. So that really is an outcome, that we're having fun on stage, and 10 years later we've got published poets in Swindon, from Swindon.
And of course it all starts on 4th of May with the Dawn Chorus.
Crazy. Whose idea was that? Most other festivals start in a posh hotel with a glass of wine and warmth. And Swindon starts at 5:30 a.m. on a dawn outside Swindon, and it's magic. And we watch the sun rise over Swindon, and we're all thankful to be alive. And no, that's the start of the festival.
And I don't know whether it's just luck or judgment or whatever. I mean, you can never pick those days, but the sun always seems to shine, doesn't it?
Not always. We've got soaked sometimes, but even then, there's something about that it's a kind of challenge that makes life feel good and fine. And then when the sun does come, if we had wall-to-wall sunshine, we would never be grateful. But when the sun does come, it's fantastic.
And can I ask you about the very first day of the festival proper? I know you got the Dawn Chorus, and it all starts with Nell McAndrew, Lydiard Park having a run, encouraging people to come out and and run with Nell.
The first day shows that the best thoughts come when the body is in motion, not sitting in a library, lovely as libraries are, not sitting at your writing desk, but actually being out there, walking, moving and talking to one another. And yes, it starts with running and walking.
So Matt, can I just ask you, between now and the start of the festival, which is going to be about 6 weeks, the programme's up there, the website's going to be there, people can go onto the website, find out information, buying tickets. Of course, we'd love it if Swindon had the venues that were holding thousands of people, but there's small, intimate venues, some of them. Central Library's one of them, the Arts Centre. They make the festival, don't they?
Absolutely. And many authors have said that. It has an intimacy, Swindon, that some of the bigger festivals don't have. But people must hurry and get their tickets, otherwise they'll miss their chance and the Londoners will get them all. And we don't want that, do we? Lovely as Londoners are.
And I know it's the ubiquitous question, Matt, we have to ask it. You've had 21 festivals. What's the highlight for you this year? The one that you really would say, that's the one I will not be missing?
Phil, that's much too hard a question. There are 63 events. How am I going to do that? I'll be there at dawn and I'll be there at the finale, and I'm looking forward to everything in between. I really am. And if Swindon Web keep telling the world about it, they'll all be there as well.
Well, Matt, on behalf of the people of Swindon, thanks for organising. It's a fantastic job.
Thanks for saying. My pleasure. Thanks.